Few people understand it, but everyone feels the effects of it. When you go to the gas station or when you visit the local grocer, chances are you've sensed something is off, most notably the prices. Things are getting more expensive globally. Your fuel, your cooking oil, your vegetables, every commodity is becoming more expensive. The question is why? One reason is the war in Ukraine. Global supply chains are under threat. And when that happens, prices go up. But that's not the only reason. You see, the global economy is at an inflection point. People are vaccinated, Wuhan virus cases are down, lockdowns have disappeared. So the world is looking at the next phase, the phase of economic recovery. Before that, they have to deal with the past, the period between 2020 and now. What was the highlight of that period? Massive spending. Every country was announcing stimulus packages. And they had two objectives. One, cover the pandemic-related expenditure like masks, PPE kits, vaccines, and all sorts of things. And two, keep the economy afloat. The private sector stopped investing during the pandemic years, so someone had to keep spending money, and that someone was the government. How much money are we talking about? The G7 alone spent $8 trillion. India announced packages worth $300 million. All of this money flooded into our economy. At that time it was needed, because money was not the priority, saving lives was. But in economics, like in life, actions have consequences. What happens when you flood the economy with money, when you spend too much? Prices begin to rise. In other words, inflation. That's what happens. And that's what's happening right now. Take a look at this table. In Argentina, inflation is at 52%. In Brazil, 11%. Canada, 5.7%, the highest in 31 years. In France, it is 5.1%, their highest level since December 1985. India too is feeling the pinch. Inflation here is at 6.95%, the highest level since 2020. In Australia, it is 5.1%, which is the worst level since the year 2001. Long story short, prices are rising in every continent, and the result is this. Central banks are stepping in to raise interest rates. India did that today. The Reserve Bank of India hiked interest rates by 40 basis points. The new lending rate is 4.4%. It was the first policy hike in almost 4 years. What does this mean for you? In simple words, it means less money to spend. When interest rates rise, loans become more expensive. Your monthly payments go up, and this causes a chain reaction. People will spend less, and gradually inflation will ease. India is not the only country doing this. Australia did the same on Tuesday. The US Federal Reserve is planning to do it tonight. Europe, Canada, England, all of these central banks are planning to hike interest rates, basically slow down spending. By how much? The G7 is shrinking its balance sheet by $410 million. To put that number into perspective, last year they added 2.8 trillion. This year they're slashing $410 million. It is a complete turnaround for the world economy. The last 2 years were about mindless spending. The next 2 or more could be about tight controls. Which brings us to the big question. What should you be doing with your money? Should you spend it, save it, or invest it? What's the best option right now? Let's focus on India for the moment. Sensex dropped 1,300 points today. Nifty fell 2%. Is the worst over? Or could the markets fall even more? Depends on what the US Federal Reserve does. Foreign investors are waiting for their decision, the US Federal Reserve, and rumor is the Fed will hike interest rates by 50 basis points, their largest hike since the year 2000. And if that happens, foreign investors will flock to America. Where will they flock from? Possibly Asian markets. Investors could pull out of Asian markets and dump their money in the US, and if that happens, the markets may fall further. So hold off on any immediate stock buys. That's what experts say. Where does all of this leave our economic recovery then? In a limbo. Because things are hard to predict right now. Job openings in the US are at a record high. Eurozone unemployment hit a historic low, yet growth is sluggish. America's GDP contracted 1.4% in the last quarter. 2 quarters of negative growth is recession. That's how precarious things are. which explains why the central banks have finally intervened. Some experts say it's already too late, that spending should have been tightened earlier. Others say better late than never. Either way, the top priority seems to be curbing inflation right now to control spending. And frankly, it makes sense. Just look at what's happening in Sri Lanka. Mindless expenditure has left them broke. So what we need at the moment is fiscal prudence. Imagine your economy was a car. For the last 2 years, this car has been running non-stop, and that too at top speed. So now it's time to give it a rest. Maybe open the hood, let the engine cool off. As for economic growth, it can be handled in the long run. Just to ask one question, what will that long run look like? Russia's war is going nowhere, China's lockdowns are getting worse. If only there was normalcy, the economy could recover. But right now, some leaders seem to be following the words of John Keynes. In the long run, we're all dead. Wion is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all.
Shalom, give all praise, Yahweh Shem Yoshua, Bashem Rakakadosh, Jabba honors to the elders and apostles for their vacation and knowledge. So why do Yahweh Shem Yoshua put in the spirit of the elders and apostles so we can be edified regarding this truth and knowledge? Call holy Yahweh Shem Yoshua, Bashem Rakakadosh, give all praise, Yahweh Shem Yoshua, Bashem Rakakadosh. That was a Wion video talking about the central banks of India and various other banks relating to the interest rates and how the economy is becoming unstable. Look up inflation. The action of inflating something or a condition of being inflated, like a balloon is blowing up. That's how the economy. The economy is like that balloon. It's blowing up to a point where, like that balloon, it gets too much air, it's going to eventually bust. And it's just a matter of when. A general increase in prices and fall in purchasing value of the money. So the purchasing power, lessen of the purchasing power of the dollar and increase of the goods, man. And that's causing that inflation, man. The general increase in prices and the fall in the purchasing value of the money, which is the dollar, man. So the purchasing power or the value of the dollar is falling. And that increases these prices, man. Economy and economics. Inflation is general increase in prices and goods and services in the economy. But when the general price level rises, each of the unit of the current buys fewer goods and services. Consequently, inflation corresponds to a reduction in the purchasing power, which is the dollar. So it's going to increase. So we're in inflation, man. Plus money being spent, stimulus packets, different things, money be given and stuff. So it's a reverse trickle effect, man. We're in the stages of inflation, which is eventually going to turn to hyperinflation, where things are going to go beyond a certain point, man. For example, bread will be extremely high. You can't even afford it, man. Meat will be astronomically high, man. So we're in the pre-stages of inflation, but hyperinflation, that's when, let's look that up. Hyperinflation. Monetary inflation occurring of a very high rate. Economics. Hyperinflation is a very high and typically accelerating inflation. It quickly erodes the real value of the local currency, which is the dollar, and as the prices of all goods increase. So not only they increase, they exceedingly increase, man. Causes people to minimize the holdings in that currency as they usually switch to a more stable foreign currency, such as the U.S. dollar. And one time the dollar was a stable entity, man. But now all these countries are moving from the dollar because they want to break from the dependency of that dollar and move to what they would call a more stable currency for them, for their interests, man. Which eventually is going to push that dollar and the euros and all that leads to ultimately a certain chapter in 13:16. That's not too far ahead, related to Revelations 13:16 on down. These are the precursors to build up ultimately what's to really come, you know what I mean? Stagflation, we're going to look up that one too. Because a lot of countries are moving from the dollar. They tired of dealing with the dollar. They tired of being dependents on that dollar. And they try and pretty much break that control of them using that, man. That's why they moving these other currencies, man. And that's going to push which was once the very powerful hegemony of currency of the world, man. That's gonna eventually move it out of the way, man. Where pretty much that dollar's gonna fall, man. That's gonna happen, man. But they have to have something to replace it. That's what I was saying. Revelations 13:16 on down, man. Because they're moving to a more additional to ultimately where you're going to be in a matter of speaking additional, man. In a matter of speaking, man. So they precondition you to at certain levels what they want, man. Hyperinflation. Let's go to stagflation, man. Did a lesson earlier relating to this. Now, stagflation is the persistent high inflation combined with high unemployment and a stagnant demand in a country's economy. So a very slow economical, a high unemployment with high inflation, man. A stagnant or pretty much a non-moving economy, man, with high inflation, high unemployment, man. We in those stages, man. For example, in China, with the lockdowns, that's going to affect because there's an article saying millions of people are out of work in China, man. So the lockdowns, they can't produce nothing, man. So that affects their economy, man. That's like the economy is like that moving water, man. If it's not generating and being constantly moving, it's going to become stagnant and eventually it's going to die, just like the economy, man. So if they're not producing nothing, it's not only going to affect their interests when they're in their country, but it's going to affect everybody else because it's going to trickle down to where it affects globally, man. Everybody else, because China, we get a lot of things from China, man. So it's gonna stop everything else, man. So an economic stagflation or recession inflation in a situation in which the inflation rate is high, economical growth slows, unemployment remains steadily high, man. the present dilemma in the economical policies, since the actions intended in the lower inflation may exacerbate unemployment. And that word stagflation goes back to, origin of it goes back to the 70s, man. Stagflation was first coined during periods of inflation unemployment in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom experienced the outbreak of inflation in 1960s and 1970s, man. 73, let me see the dates. You hear about the stagflation in the 1970s. The U.S. wind and energy skyrocketed due to the embargoes leading to the OPEC with the oils, resulting in crude oil doubling. That was from 1973 to 1975. The difference between the stagflation and inflation, man. Inflation is pretty much high, where interest rates is high and the goods, services, products are very high, man. They're increasing with the economy increasing, man. Now, stagflation is the economy that has inflation that has the high inflation, but a slow or stagnant growth, economical growth rate with a mixture of a relatively or very high unemployment, man. And that's what you're seeing, man. Both are bad, man. High products, foods, and services, man. Everything's increasing, from plane tickets to buying dairy products, meats, and different things. Everything is high, man. It's going to continue to grow that. It's going to continue to exacerbate more or worse, and it's going to even get higher, man. It's going to get a point where you're not going to be able to buy nothing, man. Let's go to a scripture. And he answered me and said, Thou measure time diligently in itself, and when thou seest the parts of the signs past, as I told thee before. So how we measure that time diligently? Connecting it with what's going on in society with the scriptures, man, according to prophecy. And these things were spoken that certain things will happen in the latter times, that a generation will not pass into these things, these things come to pass. Basically, they were experiencing. Then shalt thou understand is the very same time when the highest will begin to visit the world which he has made. So the Lord is beginning to visit the world which he has made, man. For many great miseries shall be done in the latter times, because they walk greatly in pride, man. So a lot of miseries, calamities, different things. Relating to social, economical, financial. That's part of it. So the Lord is beginning to visit the world which he has made, man. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes, uproars of the people in the world. That's what you're seeing, earthquakes, uproars of the people, lockdowns. People can't go nowhere. A man should desire to hear and see. That's 2 Ezra 16 and 27. Communication, be able to communicate, be able to see, be able to go to and fro. They should not be able to go to from one part of a town to another, because it's lockdown, man. Martial law, man. Curfews, lockdowns and stuff. These are the times we enter in, man, relating to prophecy, man. And then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that they were before thee, even from the beginning. So these things were spoken before from the beginning. A very long time ago. For like as all that is made in the world have a beginning, which is the Alpha, the beginning, and the end, and the end is manifest, is manifest, which is the Omega, man. For the Lord is the beginning and the end, man. Symbolically, man. So he's manifesting these things, man, for relating to the things to come, man. So the end is manifest, is being made known by the allowance of certain things that's happening in society, man. And even at times also the highest have plain beginnings and wonders and powerful works, and endings and effects and signs, man. And everyone that shall be saved shall able to escape by his works and by faith whereby he had believed. Ones who endure to the end, the same shall be saved, man. Will never come into a time that never has been since Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 30:7, man. So all these things are coming. In the last days, there should be perilous times. Perilous times are bad times, man. We in perilous times right now, man. It's not really manifesting on that level here in this country, but it slowly is, man. It is incrementally, the small incremental levels, but the true manifestation, when it really manifests, the worst will happen here, man, because the judgment of certain things is going to happen here more, man. So these interest rates, had to jack up the interest rates and different things, and we tried to rebalance the economy. So it's more of an injection into already really a flaccid economy, man, to boost it up, to buff it up, man. So there's a few scriptures. Hope it helps. This is Brother Zayab. Hope this helps in some way. I want to give all praise. Yahweh Bashem Yoshua Bashem Makakadash. Shalom. Thanks.